The tram ride back to the main command center was a quiet one. In fact, for the first time since Mick had boarded the massive Tianum vessel, everything around him felt different. The many stops they had made throughout the day had shown him that he was actually holding the fate of humanity within his hands. As a child, Mick could remember the night he and his grandfather first watched mankind's greatest disaster in living color on a screen that took up the entire wall of a classroom at the elementary school they attended. The memories that scene brought back were vivid and painful, even after 3 years had passed since his mother's death. A woman he didn't even remember seeing often enough had suddenly been gone, destroyed by a major corporation that fought its enemies with destruction instead of kindness. Though he had sung the victory anthems alongside the survivors with his grandfather, Mick couldn't bring himself to feel happy about the outcome. That was just the way he was, even when he was just a boy who didn't fully understand adjectives mean. The people who did the actual fighting for humanity's survival had been holding weapons instead of love from the time Mick was born. In fact, he had heard more stories about wars all throughout his life than he cared to remember. Even when making a career for himself in social work, it seemed like helping people meant discussing how they were affected by war. Everything resulted in death and destruction. The very people by whom humanity saved wasn't very different from the ones who put it in that dangerous position. "Yeah, all right, brother." Morning dew finally broke the silence as she gave her gaze from the announcement board in front of them to her troubled brother. Huh. Mick's head snapped towards his sister. "Oh yeah. I'm fine. Just thinking a lot is all." That didn't count at all. "I'm gonna have another litter on cats one of these days and give them to you a lot of thinking." Dew put on a mocking and humorous grimace that caused their brother-in-law Ben to let out an unexpected laugh while N simply continued looking forward with an expression of slight annoyance. "Oh, very funny, sis." Mick immediately changed his demeanor to one of annoyance towards his brother-in-law. "You thinking I should get a bunch of cats 'cause they're cutie-wooties?" "You said it, pal." Ben maintained his amused posture despite Mick's glares and Dew's elbows in his sides. "I'm your loving brother-in-law. If you would have fun toys that keep you company while you think, then who am I to complain?" "That motion takes 7 years to vote on, and I would love to veto it if I could." Their mildly humorous conversation managed to break the tension that had built up during the tram ride, but not by much. Mick could still feel it lingering around his own mind. As the tram came to a stop at the primary command center and the doors opened, Atxika and her ever-present team of 5 women were already waiting. No surprise there. The Ardneri AI, or Godall, as many tended to call them, never seemed to lose focus when she was in charge of an operation. There's something extremely impressive about that, especially when that operation involved hundreds of new students experiencing the first part of their formal interstellar education. But she was absolutely spectacular when she determined it necessary to make her presence known to humans. "My organizer has calculated that the current tour rotations are 52 minutes shorter than anticipated." Atxika spoke without any emotion as she stepped onto the tram and extended a hand towards Mick. "I am required to report this for your approval, organizer. Please direct me to the current schedule you wish me to deviate from. My tactical calculus and reality calculations suggest that you are simply miscounting due to an unforeseen positive correlation." "Yeah, about that." Mick took a moment to grab Dew's hands as he helped her off the tram and onto the polished metal floor, or of the command center. "Do you mind if we talk about that after you guys update us on the offering ceremonies? Are you suggesting I should adjust my reporting schedule based on an emotional evaluation of the timing accuracy?" Atxika made a somewhat subtle motion with her fingers that even a blind man could tell meant she was processing something well beyond what humans could comprehend. "As for the relative effectiveness of offering ceremonies, my auxiliary processes are already running optimal alternatives for the reported legion of qualified kind warriors. An additional 12 minutes of conflicts will yield the highest statistical probability of success for the designated program. 9. You sound like Dew when she's been staring at the recreation center's buffet for too long. Ben joked again, though thit. Time Espen joined in his amusement simply because she knew he enjoyed it. Ha 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 ha! I'll get right on that, Atxika. Mick sighed deeply while walking along the path floored with glowing lights that Atxika pointed towards. I'm glad one of us knows exactly what we're doing. All complex systems require centralized command structures like... Despite Atxika not even needing to breathe, the sound stopped just as Mick managed not to escape a ridicule after receiving a rather sharp look from his wife. You are the primary executive organizer of this initiative, Mickey. I simply give you reality-based alternatives. The decision of whether or not to deviate from optimum scheduling remains solely your responsibility. Nice. He still needs to learn to have fun. Morning Dew whispered in an attempt to be heard only by her brother. Sometimes, yeah, don't need to do everything by the book, 'cause there ain't no book. As they approached the main stage where the projection was being displayed, Zadi, Lysander, and Sapa were already there waiting. The three men were standing like statues, while dozens of they soon-to-be students looked on with anticipation of what would come next. Zadi's management capabilities might actually be better than Atxika's at this point, Mick legitimately thought. The chief brave from the Nishnab militia clearly understood the true nature of this transition. He vessel was the key. More importantly, the willpower human sacrifice speared inside every logical component. Once the offering ceremony began, he would be putting his complete faith in people who cared far more about money and their own glory than they did about the future of a species whose existence they were willing to risk for the sake of their own stand. Ding dot! Welcome, everyone. Mick stepped onto the stage and immediately received the attention he required. His posture wasn't quite as confident as Zadi's, but it wasn't as uncertain as many would assume. Today's a big day. A day you all will remember for the rest of our lives. As some of ya know, these three men have given us far more than just permission to use our vessels. They've given us their trust, and we're all gonna have to earn that. Myself, most of all. Like this gentleman said, Mick's glance wasn't dismissive of his sister, but the fact that it happened at all caused the Red Dragon of Mars to roll his eyes. Sometimes ya have to follow your heart instead of the book. Instantly, one of the small composers that had been predicted by Atxika as the solution surged to Ben's meeting point. The thrilled applause from the hopeful students in the other room was the only testimony to its ineffectiveness. Suffocated in the belligerent glare of a stone warrior from a respected alien civilization. Not long ago, Mick explained to his visitors, Ben would have told me what I'm about to say as we were walking towards the bar. In unison, the Nishnabé commanders, Nampesho Acton and Sapa Tatanka, descended the podium step. Enclosed by the surge of students, they embodied the stoic honor for which they were esteemed. In this arena of human future, for which they were already unworthy, they were the legitimate arbiters of courage. Lysander Nampesho Acton, elected chairman of the anti-corporate revolution and a true revolutionary. Mick began with a proud and resounding voice, only to be devalued by Zadi's silent turn of his back. Us dictator of Mars orbits for the past 8 years. Dictator? Sapa Tatanka uttered with controlled venom, his rigid form casting a shadow over his slightly shorter colleague. I'm fine with it 'cause I ain't never tried to be something other than what I am. Acton preempted a conflict with cool confidence. Atxika, now in full view, scanned the temporal disruption. Her soul has calculated that Mick's historical chronicle was carrying a 0-point energy deficit. By bridging this specific gap so voraciously, the rest of engagement could far more efficiently reflect the unity of a species guaranteed for greatness. At the same time, Chief Brave Zadi Pakwanik, Chief of Staff of the Revolutionary Martian Militia, whispered a simple armed command to its guardians, within the neural network surrounding the Hall of Opportunities. They knew not race nor ideology, only the mission to safeguard their most trusted investment. The students, oblivious to the sudden calculus of protective surge, focused adoringly on their new allies. The lion and the dragon gazed upon them with unreadable. The president watched them all with a hope that trembled on the axis of trust.